from the headquarters of Telestia English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I'm Sani Gray. Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno has asked his entire cabinet of ministers to resign. The government has explained that this is part of the process to evaluate ministers' performance in office. After this evaluation process is completed by the end of the year, the president will make public his decision regarding his cabinet. And while the rest of the country was enjoying Thanksgiving Day, U.S. troops deployed at the southern border crossing were busy prepping for the migrant caravan's arrival. The troops appeared to be carrying out an exercise as military helicopters were seen hovering overhead. It took place just hours after the U.S. president said he had authorized the use of lethal force by troops guarding the border against migrant caravans. Our correspondent Alina Duarte was at the border with Mexico as the U.S. military carried out their drill.
We are here at the San Isidro border crossing between San Diego and Tijuana. The U.S. military has just carried out a drill, just hours after President Donald Trump announced on this Thanksgiving Day that he would be prepared to close the frontier because of the arrival here of 5,000 migrants from Central America. In recent days, 5,900 U.S. troops have been deployed in 3 border states. Trump says that since yesterday, they have been authorized to use lethal force to defend members of the Border Patrol. This authorization should have been passed on by the Secretary of Defense, but in a press conference, James Mattis said that the troops on the border would not be armed. So that is the context in which this military exercise has taken place. This is just one of the immigration measures taken on by Trump, who has repeatedly called the migrant caravan an invasion and a threat. After the midterm elections on November 6th, Trump had backed away somewhat from this topic, but we'll see how that develops now.
And a large group of migrants marched towards the border in Tijuana in an attempt to request asylum. The march started a couple of hours before the drills by U.S. troops. The various migrant caravans headed to the border are made up of about 7,000 people from Central America.
It's a way of telling Trump to get things underway as well. We've been lining up for asylum, but it's very slow. We can't spend months waiting for authorities to get moving and suffering.
What is missing is a flow of information so that migrants can see their options. If they want to cross the border, then they have to put their names on a list and be aware of the daily quota of people.
After almost 40 days since they left their homes, more migrants have arrived at Tijuana with the hope of starting a new life in the United States.
Nearly 40 days and 40 nights after they left their homeland, they arrived at the border city of Tijuana. They walked more than 4,000 kilometers to reach their destination.
When I realized we arrived to the border with Mexico and the U.S., I felt a relief.
Just a couple of steps away from the wall that divides Mexico and the United States, migrants have sought refuge. They've survived a journey that is yet to reach its end.
We are so close to the border, waiting for Trump to grant us permission to pass. We came here to look for a better future for our children, to work and have a new life. There are some people that have been in the city of San Diego for a week now, and desperation is starting to boil.
Crossing the border is crucial to improving the future of all those who they left behind at home.
I came to help my mother, who stayed in Honduras, to work and help her.
Displays of solidarity have been countless. However, the more than 3,000 migrants who now comprise the caravan have also been hard hit by xenophobia.
As we were walking here yesterday, a police officer said, "Get out of here, Hondurans." Then he cursed, but I didn't say anything bad. We are not here to disrespect them.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration insists that U.S. military forces have been deployed in anticipation of what he has described as an invasion.
Dozens of people in Chile have gathered in front of the presidential palace, holding up portraits of the Mapuche member Camilo Cachayanca to protest his murder. Demonstrators held the portrait of Catrianca to their faces for 40 minutes in complete silence. The murder of the young Mapuche man at the hands of the police a week ago has sparked a wave of protest. This protest was organized by a group of artists and activists.
For anyone who wants to participate, the event involves holding up a portrait of Camilo Catrillanca up to your face, in front of the presidential palace, and facing that way because we believe those responsible for his death are in there.
And Interior Minister Andres Chadwick will be called to Congress to answer questions about Catrillanca's murder. With 61 votes in favor, lawmakers approved a resolution which would allow questions to be posed to the minister. And this is to take place during a lower house session on December 11. The opposition says it hopes it will serve to publicly clarify the police's role in the murder. And our correspondent in Santiago, Thierry Valenzuela, brings us more details about this case.
On Wednesday, the National Police Chief went to Congress to answer questions made by human rights and Mapuche community commissions in regard to the timeline of events that led to the murder of Mapuche activist Camilo Catrillanca. This case has outraged political movements and the Chilean people. The Mapuche have held several demonstrations with the support of Chilean citizens. Many people have marched in different parts of Santiago and throughout the country, in particular where Mapuche communities are located. Tomorrow, there will be more demonstrations in Santiago to demand justice and to reject the ongoing state violence against the Mapuche people.
Still in Chile, a study by a non-profit organization has revealed that over 5 million people there live below the poverty line. Now, these figures go against official government statistics that some argue try to hide the country's real socio-economic issues.
The Sol Foundation has challenged the government's claim of how many people live in poverty. According to its research, there are actually 4 million more than the official numbers say. In fact, over half of Chile's population earns less than $500 a month, in a country that has one of the highest costs of living in the region.
Nobody in Chile can manage to live on a minimum wage. Today, no one can live with a monthly average of 200,000 pesos.
The cost of living here is through the roof. Inflation is supposedly under control, but in reality, that's not true.
The Sol Foundation has laid bare the disparity between reality on the ground and what the government thinks to be the case.
The conclusion we have come to is that, taking into account salaries and the pension system, nearly 30% of the population lives under the poverty line, not just 8.6% as the government reports. That's an increase from a supposed 1.6 million people to over 5 million.
Among those millions, the most affected are senior citizens and the Mapuche people.
As a Mapuche, we are being used for a government program that has its whole charade written out. They say there is no discrimination, no violence, no stolen lands.
A government that is clearly out of touch can be the only way to describe how a country with the biggest GDP in Latin America has such high levels of inequality.
To other news now. On Wednesday night, police shot and killed a member of the Confederation of Workers of the Popular Economy in Argentina. His name was Ronald Orellana. Orellana was killed outside Buenos Aires during a police operation to evict a group of people who wanted to take over land to build houses. Witnesses said that he was shot in the mouth and in the back. Others were injured by rubber bullets. 4 people were arrested. Students and teachers have faced off against the police in the Argentine capital as the legislature voted in favor of a controversial new university project. A strong police presence blocked the demonstrators from reaching the parliament building and used tear gas to break up the protest. 29 higher education colleges will close to make way for the bill, leaving many teachers without a job. The Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has met with the Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel in Havana. Sanchez and Díaz-Canel have agreed to maintain permanent political contact with annual meetings. Both leaders have expressed their wish to normalize the relations between the two countries. This is the first visit by a Spanish premier to the island in 32 years. And we'll take a short break now, but we'll have more news after this.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Thousands of women have marched in Chile's capital, Santiago, in protest of gender violence. The demonstration comes just before the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women on Sunday. Women carried a huge 80-meter-long poster with the photographs and names of victims of femicide. They are demanding tougher measures against those who commit these crimes. At least 44 women were killed in Chile in 2018 by their former partner.
Violence against women is violence that is expressed in multiple forms, every day, repeatedly to all of us, from the very young to the elderly.
Jail, mainly jail, and to have tough measures or even more tough against them, against misogynists.
Human rights organizations in Colombia are calling on the government to fulfill the peace agreement signed in 2016. Around 400 social leaders gathered at the 10th National Human Rights Forum to debate on a possible solution to the social conflict. Leaders warned of the potential dismantling of the system for reparations and justice. They also condemned the persecution of former FARC members. In 2014, the Colombian government and the FARC announced a plan to solve the country's drug problem. Let's find out more in the third part of our series on Colombia's peace agreement.
The government wanted to get to the root of the problem, so they decided to take back land that's being used by drug traffickers. To do this, they pledged to consult people living in over 100 areas they wanted to target. The needs of the community were meant to be taken into account before they rolled out any measures, but the government have failed to do this.
Minister Emilio Achila was in charge of the post-conflict discussions. For 20 days, he called us to meet him at the presidential palace. But when we got there, he was not there. That makes us think they are taking the process as a joke. It's disrespectful to social leaders and to the peace agreement.
The expansion of illegal crops is directly linked to poverty and a lack of law enforcement by the government. Criminal organizations have capitalized on the situation, but campesinos still hope to get rid of them and illegal crops.
Organizations like COCAM and the Catatumbo Campesino Association have shown their willingness to move forward with the removal of illegal crops on their land, but the Colombian government is not helping.
According to reports, the removal of illegal crops has only progressed by 2%. All the while, campesinos are at the mercy of criminal gangs, leading to the death of 47 of their leaders.
The previous government promised to find a solution to illegal crops, but they didn't, and neither has the government of Iván Duque. The killing of our leaders continues.
According to the spokesperson of the Kroc Institute in Colombia, it's time to put an end to the criminalization and persecution of campesinos with the support of the government.
The challenge Colombia faces is to integrate solutions in order to stop these crimes. It has to be a step-by-step process that answers all concerns and issues.
The peace agreement was an innovative step. It gave hope only to be dashed by the lack of commitment to it.
The first group of more than 6,000 Cuban doctors working in Brazil have arrived in Havana. This after their government announced its withdrawal from the More Doctors program. The group was welcomed by the Deputy Health Minister. The doctors had worked in disadvantaged areas of Brazil for the past 3 years. Cuba's decision to pull its doctors out of Brazil came after the president-elect Jair Bolsonaro made inflammatory remarks questioning their qualifications. The Forum on Critical Thinking has entered its last day. The event is taking place just under a week before the G20 meeting in Argentina. It has been billed as one of the most important gatherings of progressive social scientists, politicians and activists, all with a view to discuss the fight for equality, social justice and democracy. Where leaders have taken part in the forum, so far we've heard from the former presidents of Brazil and Argentina, Dilma Rousseff and Cristina Fernandez, as well as from the vice president of Bolivia. Argentina's economist and politician Cecilia Nahon has criticized the government of President Mauricio Macri and says that he uses the G20 group to serve his own interests.
Argentina looks at it sideways, and the government of Mauricio Macri in particular takes advantage of the G20 group to try to legitimize its neoliberal agenda, its agenda of exclusion, with a double speech. They say very important things that sound very nice, and the reality is that it's a government that is carrying out a very brutal adjustment.
Various social organizations in El Salvador have taken to the streets to demonstrate against water privatization. Their main goal is to demand that the National Assembly declares access to water as a human right. The demonstrators also visited the headquarters of various political parties demanding laws that favor the environment. According to the UN, El Salvador has the highest level of environmental damage in the American continent after Haiti. A court in Guatemala has found a former soldier guilty of murdering hundreds of indigenous people during the dictatorship in the 1980s. It was one of the bloodiest massacres carried out by the army.
Santos Lopez is a former member of Guatemala's elite force known as Caiviles. He's been sentenced to over 5,000 years in prison for being responsible for the De las Dos Eres massacre in 1982.
For us, it's very satisfying to see this after horrible crimes against our country during the armed conflict. I believe that it's very good, not only on a personal level, but also for the families. I was a victim of it. 6 members of my family disappeared. My first son was one of them. This won't bring our relatives back, but I think it's necessary, so no more crimes against humanity happen again.
The tribunal held this retired military officer responsible for murdering 201 people and crimes against humanity, possibly the most brutal massacre the army perpetrated against indigenous people. A survivor told the judges about the details.
I was 11 years old when these men killed my family, people and children. I watched how they killed women. They also killed children one by one. So there were no survivors left.
Forensic research and statements from the families of the victims and survivors were given to the court for the sentence to be passed. This case has uncovered just how barbaric the army was.
They were executed by hitting them on the head with hammers. They broke their skulls and threw them to a pit. They also threw kids alive in there, and they shot men and threw grenades at them. I think that was the most shocking part. This community was erased from the map.
Dictator Efraín Ríos Montt should have been put on trial too, because the massacre took place under his administration. He died before he could be brought to justice.
Dozens of chefs in Bolivia have made the world's largest charque can, a local delicacy cooked with llama meat. This in a bid to push llama meat from Bolivia to international kitchens. It's already a culinary delight for many indigenous communities in Bolivia. Experts say it's not only delicious but a healthy alternative red meat, as it has a high nutritional value. More than 500 kilos of llama meat were mixed with eggs, corn and potatoes to make a local delicacy. And Mexico's mariachis have marched to honor their patron saint, Cecilia. Hundreds of musicians filled the streets of Mexico City as they made their way to the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe, where Saint Cecilia is kept. Wearing their traditional crop jackets and sombreros, mariachis joined persons as they paid homage to the patron saint in song. We'll take another short break. More news in a minute.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Gunmen have killed at least 7 people in an attack on the Chinese consulate in the Pakistani city of Karachi. The 3 gunmen, 2 police officers and 2 other unidentified victims are confirmed dead after armed attackers attempted to storm the building. An insurgent group has claimed responsibility for the attack.
All Chinese consular staff and family members in China's consulate in Pakistan are safe. Prime Minister Imran Khan had expressed condolences to the consulate. The Chinese side strongly condemns any violent attacks targeting any diplomatic missions and requests the Pakistani side takes measures to ensure the safety of Chinese nationals and organizations. China expresses condolences for the 2 dead Pakistani security officers as well as the families and those injured.
8 people have died after an armed attack on a French drilling company site in southeastern Niger on Thursday. The assailants are believed to belong to the Nigerian jihadist group Boko Haram, which is active near the border with Nigeria. War crime suspect Alfred Yakatom has been arrested outside the Central African Parliament in Bangui. Yakatom will face the International Criminal Court this Friday. He has been accused of the murder, deportation and torture of Muslims as the leader of the anti-Balaka armed movement. Officers had to forcibly remove him from the parliament after he used his gun inside the building. More than 500,000 civil servants in Tunisia walked off the job, demanding higher wages. The state workers gathered in front of the parliament building, calling for the government to resign. Several public institutions nationwide were paralyzed by the strike, while only emergency services were provided at the hospitals. The International Monetary Fund is pressuring Tunisia's government to cut the public sector wage bill.
We're here to ask for salary increases for workers and for retired people. Authorities say they don't have money for them, but they have it for those who cause division, those who carry out bombings, but not for normal citizens.
I'm here as everybody with the UGTT union. We have uncertain jobs. We are here with the UGTT because we support it and we support their demands.
Lebanese citizens have taken to the streets of Beirut to protest against the government. The demonstrations took place on the country's 75th anniversary of independence. Protesters are, however, demanding real independence as they call for Lebanon to be free from sectarianism and strife. They say the country has also failed to protect its citizens and to provide for them. Prime Minister Saad Hariri has yet to form a government some 6 months after parliamentary elections took place.
We are here today to demand real independence for the country free from sectarianism and strife. Do we have a real independence? Do we have a country? No water, no electricity, no services, so we have no sovereignty over our public property. We are here today to say we demand real independence of state institutions and an independent judiciary free from political interference and with dignity for Lebanese citizens.
After 14 years, a road that connects North and South Korea has been officially reopened. The project is part of a military agreement between Pyongyang and Seoul, which was signed during the 3rd Inter-Korean Summit. It will be used to transport personnel and equipment for excavations in the Korean demilitarized zone. The Berlin Zoo presented 4 new tiger cubs. The babies are Sumatran tigers, the smallest tiger species, and they are critically endangered. The 2 females and 2 males were born last August. Just over 400 of these animals are still out in the wild. Gorgeous cuties. We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, we are on Starsat 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I am Sweeney Gray. Thank you for watching.